Nothing sells like sex and violence. And luckily for gamers across the globe, that is just what they got with the release of Dead or Alive. Today, the long-running franchise is a globally recognized fighting game brand with a controversial legacy. From Jiggle physics to spin-off games centering around beach volleyball and even special shower scene reward scenarios, Dead or Alive is without a doubt the most bizarre fighting game franchise of all time. Developed by Team Ninja and published by Koei Tecmo, Dead or Alive burst onto the scene in 1996. As you might imagine, the game revolves around the Dead or Alive World Kombat Championship, an international martial arts tournament where fighters from across the planet compete for large prizes and a highly coveted world title. While the setup might sound fairly run-of-the-mill, because it is, Dead or Alive was made with a very strategic end goal: to capitalize on the rising tide of 3D polygonal fighting games. With the release of Virtua Fighter in 1993, the gaming industry could see a massive sea change was about to happen, and Tecmo wanted to ride the wave, literally, in the case of beach volleyball games that we'll be talking about later, but back to the story at hand. The late, great Tomonobu Itagaki was the man put in charge of trying to traverse this brave new frontier, and he led Tecmo through the new frontier with a pair of sunglasses constantly affixed to his face, his permanently shaded vision, a grand vista of 3D graphics, hard punches, and because it's a fighting game created in the 90s, a bootleg Bruce Lee style character. Oh, and lots of pretty ladies with responsive anatomy. Itagaki put forward a plan to differentiate themselves from the competition in the 3D space. He pitched a path forward that only involved 3 words: sex and violence. That's it. That basically was his whole plan, which might sound like a simple design remit, but it was that North Star that guided pretty much every decision in the process of creating this initial game. Despite it being one of the first games to employ motion capture, it would be another technical leap forward that would come to define the aesthetic and perception of the franchise for essentially its entire existence. The motion capture was making the violence feel real, but the sex in the game needed to be dialed up, according to 2003 Oakley Global Brand Ambassador Tomonobu Itagaki. So what better way to display the pulsing sensuality of your new favorite MC Katsumi than to have her bits jiggle? You know, thanks to the new scientific art of jiggle physics. Yes, literally, this is what they did. They pioneered new technical improvements to 3D animation that allowed every movement of the characters to manifest and reverberate in the chest. Itagaki dubbed this technical breakthrough as breast physics. For reference, Mei from Fatal Fury had also had her ample proportions subjected to rather extreme amounts of gravitational friction for the player's amusement. But our sunglasses in chief wanted to take things a step further. Gone would be the sprites rendered by hand. Here would be mathematically accurate and erotically charged movement controlled by the player. How could it fail? It couldn't. DOA was a success, a massive, heaving success. Aside from the movements on display that lured players in, it would be the stylized combat functionality like the hold button, a deeply Freudian charged term that earned praise from critics and aficionados of the genre. A seemingly simple addition on the surface, this hold button mechanic really upended the fighting meta of its day. It both allowed you to block and have a reversal. This parrying mechanic brought another level of strategy to the fighting game world. It effectively did away with the "I'm going to out-button mash my opponent" that most games up until this point had employed. DOA 2 was released on October 16, 1999, 3 years later. Not content to rest on his laurels, Itagaki wanted DOA 2 to be the greatest fighting game ever, and also the greatest representation of 3D gaming gravity ever seen. Thus, he insisted that they develop a general game engine and breast physics engine, literally a separate engine just for characters' chests. You've got to admire Itagaki's commitment to this objectively insane pursuit. Tecmo was not happy with how long this game was taking, due to the 2 separate engines having to be built and Itagaki's perfectionism, let's call it. So allegedly, Tecmo tricked the maestro of gravitational forces into releasing the game. How did they accomplish this? Apparently, one of the managers at Tecmo convinced Itagaki to let him take a build of the game home over the weekend to playtest it. However, instead of being rapturously transported to a world exclusively populated by kicks, punches, and bouncing bosoms, he took it to a printing factory and Tecmo just released the game as is. Dead or Alive 2 is widely thought of as one of the best fighting games ever made. The combat facility was improved, the gameplay was smooth, and the graphics were a massive step forward. However, the future of the franchise was uncertain, despite the dump truck loads of cash being dropped on Tecmo's proverbial lawn because their golden boy felt betrayed by the release of the game before it was done. Tecmo was able to lure Itagaki back into the fold though, when Microsoft approached them with an even bigger dump truck of money and an offer to make DOA 3 an Xbox exclusive. Want to guess how this panned out? Yes, there was improved Jiggle physics. Thus, DOA 3, the Xbox exclusive, was a massive success, selling over 2 million units. Despite the first two games selling well, the increased spotlight of the Xbox exclusivity deal caused the unavoidable sexuality on display to really enter into the cultural conversation in a not so great way for Tecmo. In fact, it became the centerpiece of the marketing campaign of the game.
Well, I only play for the fighting.
And not necessarily in a progressive and open-minded way.
Seriously, why else would I play it?
And it would be here that DOA's legacy would become infinitely more complex. Despite 3 fighting games in a row that were released to cries of "this is the best fighting game ever," the franchise would begin producing spin-off games that have less than sky-high goals. Let's take a second and just call out that if you've made it this far into our video, please consider subscribing to the channel for more fighting game content, just like this. Okay, back to the video. That spin-off franchise? Dead or Alive Extreme Volleyball. All of the bouncing body parts you've come to expect from the DOA name, but none of the meticulously constructed fighting tournament narratives you tell yourself you're there for. Just beach volleyball, gambling simulators, and mini games that consist of you trying to hop across a pool on small square flotation devices. Believe it or not, the game won the Spike TV Video Game Awards 2003 category of Best Animation. But was that prize worth it in the end? Because this game, and wait for it, 2 sequels, would forever tarnish the brand, making the franchise seem like a crass commercial attempt at milking money out of fighting babes and their mommy milkers. Okay, that one was a little bit too far. But these 3 blatant excuses for having the Dead or Alive characters prance around on a beach in all their dynamically animated glory wasn't the only thing that tarnished the would-be Man in Black Tomonobu Yagaki's magnum opus. In 2006, the feature film Dead or Alive was released and essentially made the franchise a global laughing stock. This 1-2 punch is something the franchise still hasn't fully recovered from. Sure, you had Dead or Alive 4 being released, again to massive acclaim and sales records, as well as DOA 5 and 6 charting a new direction for the series, one with a toned-down sexuality and a corporately mandated push to get DOA into the upper echelon of fighting games. Yes, DOA 5 and 6 are both superb games, but the franchise has suffered a rolling set of public conflicts over the last decade or so. Chief among them was that Itagaki was accused of sexual misconduct, left the company, and then turned around and sued Tecmo, claiming he owned DOA. The case ended up with Itagaki settling out of court, getting his charges dismissed, and eventually moving on to direct Devil's Third before passing away in 2025. Is Dead or Alive one of the most beloved fighting game franchises ever? Yes. Is it known outside of the gaming community in the way that Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter are? No, definitely not. Ironically, it's the thing that propelled the franchise into such great heights that holds it back from being a name brand here in the West. Sexuality. Americans just don't want to accept the same levels of recreational titillation the way that other countries will. Violence? Yeah, no problem there. We're cool with letting our children pump quarters into an arcade where a dude literally rips his own face off, breathes fire, and incinerates a half-dead combatant. But a little gravity working its magic on some body parts? No, that can't be mainstream. Not here, not now, not ever. And this is something that Tecmo has realized and is attempting to course correct. During the rollout to DOA 6, it was very apparent that they were attempting to scale back the sexuality and increase the hyper-violence and make a serious bid for a spot in the competitive fighting game landscape. Did it work? Well, opinions are mixed. But the hardcore DOA fans were not happy with the way characters were redesigned. The world was made more gritty and serious, and strangely, Katsumi's new look. Will there be a DOA 7? Will Dead or Alive ever truly become the king, or queen, of fighting game mountain? Only time will tell. The only thing that is certain, we'll always remember Tomonobu Itagaki and his iconic sunglasses. And that's all we have for this episode. What do you think? Is the course correct a good thing for DOA? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, Like and subscribe for more videos just like this one.